Welcome to Sky Women. I'm your host, Dr. Carolyn Moyers, a wife, mom, and board-certified OB-GYN. This is a place to educate, empower, and inspire. Join us each week as we share the power of women's stories. Real women, real stories, real inspiration. Put on your stretchy pants. Let's get going. Welcome to Sky Women. Today we have with us Dr. Diana Sodiq. Dr. Diana is a friend of mine from med school, and when you've done your medical school training together, I feel like you have a lifelong connection regardless of where things take you. Welcome, Dr. Sodiq.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
So Dr. Sodiq is a physician, a mindset and life coach, a yoga teacher, a wife, and a mom of 3 littles. And like so many of us, she spent many years training and putting all of her energy towards this one goal. And along the way, her goals and priorities shifted. And so she had the courage to pivot too. And we're going to talk about this today and how we can empower you if you feel like you're on the same path.
Yes. So many of us have kind of that one goal we have in mind and we strive for, and we do everything right. Like we did all the things we were told, and then we get there and it's like, this is it. And so I think that was part of my story, and definitely the thing I hear from the clients that I coach and other physicians as well is you kind of get to where you did all the right things, but now you feel like you're on a hamster wheel, and it just doesn't feel as fulfilling as you once envisioned. Like the thing that was driving you to do it all is that feeling that I'm going to get to this pot of gold.
As the arrival fallacy.
Yeah.
Once we get there, it'll be better. Once we get the degree, yes. Once we buy the car, once we marry this person, once we have this many kids, we buy the house, all the things. And you show up in this life that you intentionally created, and you're like, what the heck? This doesn't feel like it was supposed to feel.
Right. It was supposed to feel different. And sometimes that's because you were waiting for that thing the whole time. Instead of being happy throughout the journey, you kind of were like, that happiness will come when I get that, external thing. And so some of it is that you were putting off creating your own happiness in your life until you reach that thing. And then some of it is, no, I was happy along the way. It just kind of got there. My goals changed, like life changed. And I think for a lot of us women, when you start a process and you're younger, your priorities change and life changes, and you have kids and, your interests change. And somehow I think a lot of times people feel that you're not supposed to change. You put in all this money to go to college and med school and everything. Why would you not do that thing? And it's like, well, I've changed. My priorities are different now. And it's okay. And I think that's one of the biggest things is like somebody telling you, like, it's okay. Nothing is wrong with you that you changed your mind.
Right. I mean, just look at toddlers. They do it all the time, right? Boldly. And they don't. They boldly change their mind, and they don't ask for forgiveness, right? And so I think that it's really important for us to just give ourselves some grace and be willing to pivot when it's not working.
Right. Absolutely.
I think this is so relatable to all women.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about coaching and what that really means, because I have had some people in my life say, oh, that's for the weak-minded. And I disagree. I am one who is a big believer on personal development and growth, right? And always having that growth mindset and always looking for how I can level up, right? But that doesn't mean increasing your stress. I want to find the joy in life and help others get there too. So talk to us about coaching and kind of what that is and what it is in your mind versus like counseling or psychiatry.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've always been interested in self-development, personal development, but there has always been something that falls short of just like kind of reading the books for me. And it was like, I read the books, man, that was a good book, but maybe either implementing it or really taking it and personalizing it and kind of where the gap has been. And so the biggest growth and ahas for me has been when I started getting coaching. And so coaching basically is helping others work on kind of peeling away your self-judgment and your criticism and starting to kind of see things for what they are. So often our brains just all the time, right? Like just give us thoughts and we just take them and we believe them like they're fact and we react. So our whole day is spent reacting to these things that we think are true. And so it could be like, you wake up and you're like, oh, I'm so tired. This is going to be a crappy day. And your whole day is fueled by that thought. And really coaching is slowing it down and being like, let's look at that thought. Is it even true? And the majority of times it's like, well, no. No. Right. And so it's finding power, that you have so much more power than you realize in these thoughts and slowing down and being aware of what you're thinking and how much control you really do have in your day, in your interactions and how you feel. So it's working with others to show them that power that they have. It's been the most amazing work. Definitely. I think when people think it's weak, they kind of don't know what they don't know. It's one of those things. It's like, well, you haven't experienced it yet.
Right. Because I was listening this morning to a podcast and they mentioned the fact that we have 60,000 thoughts a day, right? And 85% of those are negative thoughts.
Yes.
And if we cling, amazing, right? And if we cling to those negative thoughts because they're repetitive, right? So we've thought them so many times that we believe them, and we don't slow down and take a minute to be present and concentrate on our breathing and kind of slow that mind down to question those thoughts, right? We wind up with all these limiting beliefs. I'll give a perfect example. I said that I don't have a green thumb. Okay. Can't keep a plant alive because it's not asking you to be fed.
Yeah.
I got too many kids. Right. And this total limiting belief. And I decided that I was going to take on one small area in our garden, and it's lived and looked beautiful and it's flourishing for, this little flower bed for 3 to 4 months. And I thought, oh, okay, that's worked. Well, then I'll do this other area. Right. And I was like, that was a limiting belief. But I told myself that I couldn't keep any place alive. This is a small example. Another example would be, I told myself I wasn't good with money because that's what everyone tells us. Physicians aren't good with money, right? Especially women physicians, right? They haven't been given the training. But here I am running my own business because I let go of those limiting beliefs.
Yes.
So it's possible for any of us.
Yeah, it really is. And it's some of the bigger things like that I have to work full time because that's just what people do when they get their degree. I have to keep working. These are all limiting beliefs that you've been fed over and over. And so you believe then that that's true, right? If I complete medical school, then I have to practice clinical medicine. That was one of mine. So when I decided to leave my medical practice, it was like, well, who am I if I'm not practicing clinical medicine? Right? That was a big limiting belief that I had to work around to be able to even see possibilities. So that belief really puts a wall where you can't even think past that.
Yeah.
And so often that's what people are, is they're like, I can't even think of possibilities. This is all I can do. And it's because there's that limiting belief there. And once you work through that wall crumbles and you're like, oh my gosh, look at all of these possibilities here.
All the possibilities. And I feel like we so often operate out of fear. Like, well, if I work part-time, I won't be able to pay my bills. Or if I do, life is all about choices, right? And you choose to be curious and let curiosity lead you. I think instead of fear-based and just sitting back and worrying and ruminating, right? If you just are curious and explore the options, I think that it allows you more growth.
Yeah, fear will definitely keep you stuck. I mean, that's its role, right? Your brain is like, don't do that. It might not work. What if? What do they say? It's all those fear-based thoughts. And if you keep believing them and relying on those thoughts as true, you're not gonna move. And so a coach is there to be like, hey, that's not true, right? Like, let's talk about that thought. And to help you start clearing those negative thoughts out and pointing them out. And you're so close to the problem that it's hard to see,
Yeah.
Coach will be like, hey, that's not a good one for you. Let's look at some other thoughts. And often I ask my clients, is this a fear based decision or thought, or is this a loving thought? Right. And loving thoughts and decisions are really the ones that help you grow and progress.
Absolutely. So I often remind women in the office and friends, I'm reminding them to talk to themselves the way that they would talk to their daughter, the way they would talk to their best friend, right? Instead of, you're too heavy, or you don't do this, or you don't do that, or you should do that, and you're a lousy mom, like all these things that we might be saying to ourselves, right? Instead, allowing yourself grace and love and building yourself up. Like we have just been on this rat race and talking negatively to ourselves. And I think it's just really harmful.
Yeah, we are so mean to ourselves. I mean, really, there was an exercise, I think it was during my yoga training that we did, where it was like, okay, look in the mirror and say the things out loud that you are saying to yourself about missing the performance, about being late. And you're almost even embarrassed to say that out loud, or say it to your friend. I dare you, and it's no, I would never say that. Just a good reminder of that's what you're saying to yourself.
Right. Oh my gosh. Right. If we said those things out loud to others, like we would be mortified, right? Like, you would never talk to
You'd be like
someone else.
I can't believe this is coming out of my mouth right now.
Let's dive into your story a little bit. So you finished medical school, you trained in residency as a pain management physician, correct?
It's physical medicine and rehab. So one subspecialty of that is pain. There's subspecialties as well. I really ended up doing spine and pain, non-surgical spine treatments and pain, and then worked essentially full-time for 8 years in an academic institution. It was a great place to be. I loved my coworkers. I enjoyed my patients, but life happens, and we wanted a family, and we had 3 kids. And I think each time of having a child and going to work and pumping on the way to work, right? And pumping between patients and being stressed out. And each time just took a little bit more out of me of this life, and I did it the first time, second time, third time, but third time, it's like, why am I stressing myself out to this degree to live the life, to try to balance this life of being a mom and working, right? And part of my struggle was just the inflexibility of the work side of it. That, you had to see a certain number of patients within a certain time. You couldn't miss clinic for sick kids or, school functions. And that was, I think, the part that really started getting to me. It wasn't really that typical burnout of, and actually that's kind of also what made it hard to leave, is it's not that I hated it. It just didn't look, So it was like that in between, like, this is tolerable. I could keep doing this. But I finally got to the point where I was like, but do I want to? And it's like, not really. That little voice, when you start actually listening to your soul and that little voice, I don't really keep doing this.
So how did you tune into that? And how did you make that leap?
Yeah, it was not easy. But I think just being open to just listening to yourself and not making yourself wrong for having thoughts or desires that are different than the mainstream, So that voice had come up before. And every time I would see somebody leave our practice towards the end, that's kind of when I knew. When that last person left before me, one of my partners, and I was like jealous. I was like, I wish I could do that. And they all left for another job. So it was different, but just the idea of leaving the practice, and I had that longing for it. That's kind of when I was like, I need to tune into this, or I'm stuck, or I'm just going to live kind of half-hearted life, which is not what I wanted. I wanted to be living wholeheartedly for me, for my family. And so I talked with my husband about it, who's amazing and supportive, and that helps a ton because he was kind of encouraging that, listening to that soul, right? He's like, listen to it more. What is it saying? What would you want to do? Asking kind of those coaching questions before I even knew what coaching was. And we kind of set a plan. And that's something that now in retrospect, now that I coach people, I can say, hey, you don't just have to shut your brain, these thoughts off. You don't have to just shut your brain off and say, no, we're not listening to you. You kind of have to get your brain on board so that this goes smoothly, right? So when my brain is telling me like, no, you can't leave your practice. Are you crazy? What are you doing? I didn't just say, brain, I'm not listening to you. I'm leaving. Be quiet. I'm out. I was like, okay, brain, let me get you on board. What do you need from me? Right. And my brain was like, hey, I need a plan. I need to know that we're financially okay. And, a longer plan would be great, but I didn't know what that was. So it was like, okay, I'll give you part of what you want, because it's financial plan. And so my husband and I were like, okay, let's financially make this work. We downsized our house. We got rid of our nanny, So that appeased me enough to be like, okay, this is still really scary and still a huge stretch of my comfort level. It was beyond a stretch. It was like blasted out of my comfort level, but let's go. So I put in my notice, and of course it was like, what? Like, mind blown. What are you doing? You're crazy. Without using those words. I don't know if anybody said that, but they did offer, why don't you just go on FMLA? Why don't you just leave for a little bit and come back? This just must be a little thing, this just must be a little crisis.
It's a phase. You'll get over it.
Yeah, it's a phase. Just go take a little break.
At this point, how old are your kids when you're making this transition?
My youngest was 2. My youngest was 2. And so the others were 5 and 7. Yeah. So it was just, it was a decision I just had to jump and do. I think if the longer I sat on it, or if I waited to be comfortable, it wasn't going to happen. So I got my brain on board enough to jump, but I couldn't wait to be comfortable. That just wasn't going to happen. And I think that happens a lot with people, right? Like you wait to be comfortable to take a jump or a leap. And it's like, well, you're going to be waiting a really long time. And life is going to happen.
We want the certainty. We want to know that it's going to work out, right? And the one thing I know is that there is no certainty in life. There's no certainty that you'll get accepted to the college. There's no certainty that you'll graduate. There's no, there's zero certainty. There's zero certainty that you'll have a healthy baby, right? I mean, or that your marriage is going to work out. Like there's no certainty. At some point you make the decision, you live your life, you move toward what it is that you want.
Right. And there is no certainty, 100%. And that can be a hard reality to face. But as you grow and change your mindset to accept that there is no certainty in things. But what I can be certain about is that I'm going to have my own back. I'm going to go live my life, have my own back, regardless of what happens. And that is like the key to taking and leaps is like, I'm going to have my own back. So building that is so important. And that's one thing that I got through coaching, receiving coaching, right? Mm-hmm. Is that confidence in myself, that certainty that I'm going to have my back no matter what, even if this flops completely, I'm still going to have it.
Right. Yeah. I think that that's key. I think that we have to make that shift from being our own worst enemy mm-hmm. to really trusting, having that gut intuition and trusting that and having our own back. I think that that's so key. I wish that I had known you were coaching years ago whenever I went part-time, because I had that similar identity crisis of, I loved my full-time practice. I loved being just a primary OB-GYN. It was my jam. I was honing my craft. I was so happy. And it was around year 5 where this just wasn't working anymore. I needed more flexibility. I felt like I was always letting myself, my kids, my husband, my patients down. So I think I had a big identity crisis during that time, because my brain was like, you should be doing more. You should be working full time. You should be operating. You should be delivering all the babies. And taking that break and leaning into my family and being the primary parent and just doing shifts here and there, I really felt like my career is passing me by. I've just worked 13 years to become a doctor, and I've only practiced for 5. What am I doing? And I was looking to everybody else to give me the answers instead of getting quiet and going within and figuring out what it is I really wanted.
Yeah, I love that. And that's one of the beautiful things about coaching is when I'm working with my clients, it's recognizing and, hey, you have everything you need. You already have everything you need inside of you, and helping them build that belief too, and that trust that those answers are there. We just have to get quiet enough and peel back enough like layers and self-criticism and the negative chatter to hear those answers. And when they start seeing that, these light bulbs start going off, and it's like, that's where the magic happens, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is. It really is beautiful to watch the transformation from stressed, overwhelmed, closed off, limited. It's hard for your brain to think possibility when it's in stressed out mode, right? When it's in negative mindset and stressed out mode, you really can't think of possibility. And so part of it is getting out of that mode first, and then the doors open. And that's been I've loved combining kind of my mindset coaching and life coaching with my yoga training and the mindfulness component, because it really has been, sometimes you want to get out of your head. You're like, I've definitely had that in moments in receiving coaching is I need to get out of my head. I know I need different. I know I'm shifting my thoughts, but I can't be in my head anymore. I just need to drop down into my heart and just listen for a while. And that's something that the mindfulness has really lent to that part, is like, let me just listen and be kind to myself while I listen. Not judge, no judgment there.
Oh, isn't that the hardest part? I think we judge ourselves the hardest. So how do you teach others to do that?
Oh gosh, it's a process for sure. I think meditation is so helpful. And it doesn't have to mean, I think sometimes people get scared of the word meditation because they have preconceived notions about it, or they think, I can't do that. Like it's a skill I just can't do. And it is something that just takes practice, and maybe just starting with 1 minute, right? And it's just your role in meditation is to detach from your thoughts. So it's not to stop thinking. And I think that's where sometimes people are like, well, I can't stop thinking. Those thoughts just keep coming. And it's like, we know they're going to keep coming. Just don't attach to them. So imagine they're like a cloud and they're just going to pass. You're going to go, okay, I'm sitting here quietly, and your brain goes, what are we eating tonight? I don't know. What are we going to eat? Did I pick up the kids' laundry? Like your brain is going to have these thoughts, and it's just going, oh, there goes that cloud, and letting it go. So not holding on to it and getting trapped in the emotion of it, whatever thought.
Watching it pass by.
Yep. And not judging yourself that it came, because it's going to, right? It's also, I've heard it described as a touch point before. And it's almost like you get one touch point with these thoughts, especially while you're meditating and trying. And so once you hear the thought or you see the thought, that's your touch point. You don't get to touch it again. It just floats by and it leaves the arena, right? Mm-hmm. It's just practicing. It's not a natural thing for us, right? To like not hold on to the thought or feeling that comes up. And it's practicing like letting it go. I had a thought, okay, it's moved on. I feel kind of funky, but I'm going to let that move on right now. I'll come back to it later, right? But just starting to train yourself to let things go. And that can be a minute, and do that for, a couple days, a couple weeks, and then increase to 3 minutes. And you will start finding that you're able to sit with things, that you're able to pause. And that's what I tell my clients, practice the pause. You're able to start recognizing there's a pause there before you have to react. Mm. So even in self-judgment, when I am late to something, it's like practice the pause before I can start judging myself and beating myself up. Let me just pause for a moment and really reflect on how can I talk to myself with kindness? What would I say to my, friend who was running late for this? So it's creating that ability to put a pause in your life, in your moments, in your days. And it's super powerful with the mindset work, because now when you pause, you can say, what thought would I rather have? What's the thought that actually would help me feel better, get something I want, have a better day? So I would start with meditation.
So I think like when you brought up, if you wake up and you have this crappy thought, right?
Yeah.
And it'll permeate your whole day. It can sour your whole day, right?
Yes.
Instead of taking a minute, taking a deep breath, why am I thinking this way? What is it I'm feeling? What thought would serve me today? What would help me to have a great day, right? Just like those simple pauses.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you have to be sitting still to meditate?
No, that's a great question. And no is the answer. Because really you can do mindfulness and meditation in anything you do. So while you're eating, it's like while you're chewing your food, just pay attention to the sensations of the food that you're eating, the motions of your muscles. Like it's just pausing to pay attention without judgment. So if you're really paying attention to your food that you're eating or the sensations in your body, then you're not really attaching to your thoughts because now you're just observing. And so it's interesting that I was thinking about this. It's interesting that it's called mindfulness because it isn't really about your thoughts being there at all. It's really kind of observership. You're just observing things. And when you observe, you don't attach all of that negative self-criticism and you attach you can come back to it from a very intentional, what are some loving thoughts I can have here? Right. What is something I remind myself of? That's a really helpful question. So sometimes people look at mindset coaching or coaching in general, and they're like, oh, these affirmations, like either they're doing them and they're not getting results, or they're like, I'm not just telling myself I'm a millionaire. Like that's not going to help me become a millionaire. And I agree because really it's a serving. You don't just want to pick positive thoughts that you don't have emotion behind. That's the key. So it's like, what can I remind myself of? That's such a good question because when you're reminding yourself of something, it's something you already believe. Like your day starts and you're like, this is going to be a crappy day. You're like, what can I remind myself of today? And it's like, I can remind myself that I am so grateful I have this job. I get to really help people, right? And that thought is going to serve you a whole lot better throughout the day than it's going to be a crappy day. Because our thoughts are kind of like self-fulfilling prophecies, right? Like you create
100%.
Yeah. So I'm going to have a crappy day. Guess what? Like you're going to be distracted thinking about how you're going to have a crappy day. Probably get an offender bender. Maybe. Right? Your coffee's going to feel lukewarm. Like the whole day.
Right. But I love this idea of like really observing your thoughts and observing what's going on and not being attached to those feelings, because I feel like that when we do that, it more allows us this compassion for the human experience, right? Like we can say, yeah, that's a normal response to what happened. You know, if this is the circumstance, those are normal feelings and thoughts that any person would have, right? But
right.
What am I making it mean about me?
Yeah, that's a huge one. We're actually pretty self-centered. We make everything mean something about us. And it's right. Like, really, if we take that out of it, don't make anything mean anything about you, our lives would be so much happier.
So much. Yes. I mean, it's true. We are very egocentric.
Yeah. I think about that even with like my 5-year-old, like when he's not listening to me and I'm like, I feel my patience going down and my irritation going up. And, you know, sometimes I won't say that I'm always good about catching myself, but a lot of times I'm good about catching myself going, what am I making his behavior mean about me? And usually it's like making it mean that he's not listening, that I'm a bad parent, that this is his personality. You know, I'm making these big grand concepts that really, if I just breathe, practice the pause and just breathe first, and then think, what can I remind myself about this right now? It's like, he's 5. Like, he's actually a really good kid. He's just like not listening right now, right? I'm not negating the fact that he's not listening. I'm acknowledging it, but I'm also like, this isn't that big of it. Like, we're going to be okay. It doesn't mean anything about me as a mother.
I love that because, yeah. I feel like we do make it mean a lot about us. So, you know, my 3 little ones are fairly close in age at 3, 6, and 8 now. And the noise level in the house with the 3 of them who inhabit the same 2 square feet the majority of the day is insane. And this weekend they were driving me crazy with all the noise and mess. And I was like, go outside and play. And nobody wanted to go outside and play. So I thought, I'll go outside and I'll work in my garden.
Nice.
I'll remind myself because they're having a great time playing. They're not bothered with their little creative game that they're doing. Right. So why am I making this something about me and how I'm, my poor mothering and their noise level and nobody's listening to me? Just remove myself from the situation.
You're like, they're having a good time. I'll just be the party pooper outside.
Totally.
Always says whenever I'm like, ooh, like the house is such a mess. And he's like, our kids are making memories. Like he always plugs that little thought in because it is a helpful thought to have. It reduces my stress level when I'm like, they are making memories,
Love that. Say that again.
I said, like you said, the kids are having a good time, right? So they're making memories. I can just reduce my stress level on my own time.
Yes. Okay. So what your husband said reminds me of my husband and that he always says that these are the golden years. Like we're going to miss it when they're gone. Right. And so I remind myself of that a lot when I'm like, the house is a wreck and I can't stand it. And my stress level is increasing. Nobody else notices. Right. They're just having such a great time.
Right. Exactly. And, it's also interesting because also recognizing that cleaning up the house is actually, it's a choice. You could leave your house a hot mess. So it's recognizing like, I choose to do this because it makes me feel better. Right. It lowers my anxiety level to clean the house. So.
Right. Or you could actually pay somebody to do it for you if you have the resources, right?
No, absolutely. I'm all about that. Delegating is one of the most beautiful things when you release about it. That's another thing. Like a lot of my clients, we coach on that. It's like we coach on releasing the guilt, right? Because once you release the guilt, again, so many opportunities open up for you. You can delegate things without feeling guilty, and you can work without feeling guilty for not being at home, and you can be at home without not feeling guilty for working. So that's a huge topic and a huge one to coach on and get relief from, because that will make your life better too. Getting rid of guilt, getting rid of shoulds. I should do this. All of those
we
things.
Shit ourselves to death, don't we?
Yeah. Stop shitting on yourself. But yes, so much good stuff.
So after being held back and deciding to make that leap and reduce your hours and embrace mindset coaching and practice yoga and mindfulness, and it's just transformed your life, now you've created a business to help other women transform theirs. So tell us a little bit about that. Tell us about the podcast you do with your husband. Y'all have such good chemistry. It's so delightful to listen to.
Well, thank you. Yes. So now it's funny. I actually went back to working very, very, very part-time because I found the joy in medicine again, right? Like I found that I was choosing to go in. So, but I predominantly do life mindset and life coaching. I work with part-time physician moms and other professional moms to help them create a life that they love. And oftentimes that's, they come to me saying, I just want some ease and peace and balance, and I want to feel fulfilled. So that those are we work on the mindset part so that they can feel good about it, right? Your thoughts create your feelings. They can feel good about how they're living, how they're spending time, what they're doing. And then they can go create this life they love by all the things, how they fill their days, right? And their interactions with their husband, with their, partner, with their kids. So it has been such amazing work. And I'm so, so grateful that I stumbled upon this life. And honestly, I say stumbled upon, but I created it, right? With my thoughts and feelings. And had I not started seeing that there was the possibility for something different, I would still be working my 8 to 6 or whatever, 8 to 5, feeling stuck. So, So now I coach, and you can find me on exhalecoach.com. It's my website. There's also information on there about working with me one-on-one. I have a pretty large Facebook group, about 1,000 women. That's not exclusive to physicians. So I'd love for everybody to join who's interested about creating a life of happiness and joy. And my husband and I have a podcast. It's called F the Joneses or Forget the Joneses. But the idea originally started as, we downsized and we recreated our life so that we could not live like the Joneses and just live like the Sodiqs, right? Like just love our lives. And so we created the podcast in that sense. And my husband's a comedian on the side. He's also in marketing. But so I enjoy that part because we get to just like laugh and talk. And we talk a lot about marriage and relationships and kids, but also the self-development component behind all of that. So that has been a real surprising treat. I never would have expected I would have a podcast, but it's been a lot of fun. So check us out, F the Joneses podcast.
Awesome. Yeah. Yes, everyone go honor Dr. Sodiq for joining us today and follow her on Instagram. Go check out her website and listen to F the Joneses because you won't regret it.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes. Thanks for joining today. All right, Sky community, thank you for listening to another episode. This episode was sponsored by Sky Women's Health. As a reminder, we're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and we help relieve back pain and pelvic pain in pregnancy and beyond. If you are pregnant and having pain and you feel like you have no reliable way to relieve it, look us up at skywomenshealth.com, request an appointment, and we'll call to get you scheduled. As a board-certified OBGYN with a Neuromusculoskeletal Medicine Fellowship, I help you realign with hands-on drug-free treatment and relieve pain on the spot without medication. We'll help you maintain these results through your pregnancy and postpartum period. Every pregnant person deserves this, and we are so excited to serve you. You can find us on our website, as mentioned, or on social at Sky Women's Health, or you can call the office at 817-915-9803. That's it for today. Until next week, be well.